Welcome to Justice and Jubilee's Message and Music. I'm Reverend Jenny Williams. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm one of the co-chairs of Justice and Jubilee. We are a movement for collective liberation rooted in progressive Christianity and born in West Virginia, and we're so glad that you're here with us. Today I'm going to talk about 4 virtues that we seek to cultivate, foster, and honor in this collective liberation movement work. This is not an exhaustive list of virtues, but some that we think are important. And we want this to be a dynamic and dialogical ongoing conversation. So I invite you to add to it in the comments. If you have a virtue that you'd like to name for liberation work, if you'd like to fill in the blanks somewhere or add your own story, I invite you to drop those things in the comments. So these 4 virtues, I need to start by saying that I cannot help but see these through a neurodivergent lens, and you'll hear that come out as I talk about each of these virtues. The first one is curiosity. It's so important to be curious. The disciples were always asking questions. They weren't just passive receivers of information. They usually asked questions for clarification, which were often misplaced at times, but they asked nonetheless. One of those famous questions is disciples arguing about who's the greatest and asking Jesus who's going to sit at his right hand and at his left. They do want to know more, even if the things that they're trying to ask or pursue aren't necessarily in line with Jesus's vision and the movement that he embodies and initiates and inaugurates. I love to think about curiosity. I love to see it in people. The person who started to frame this for me in a particular way is a therapist I had at one time, and she did a lot of work with internal family systems and parts work, for those of you who are familiar with that field, where we look at different parts of our brain. And one of the signs of health with the parts of your brain being integrated in proper ways and differentiated in proper ways is to be curious about things that are going on around you. Now, for people who are neurodivergent, we appreciate and celebrate rabbit holes and rabbit trails, right? We can get going on any number of topics and think about those and investigate those, and for some people really put a lot of energy into those. So Alice in Wonderland may be our hero as things get curiouser and curiouser. Oftentimes that's a factual curiosity, right? But it's a curiosity born of noticing what's going on around you, noticing where the problems are, where the tensions are, and asking why. Why does this person believe that thing? Why does this person do that thing? What's happening systemically that fosters police brutality against people of color or causes disparities in school discipline among different populations of students? Or what is going on that there seems to be this school to prison pipeline for certain demographics of people? Curiosity is crucial to movement work. And we want to foster a curiosity that asks not just what, but why? A curiosity that's willing to dig in, to find out, and to always be learning. That leads to the second trait that I want to talk about, humility. A healthy curiosity is always evidenced by humility. When we ask to learn in order to be in service to people, rather than asking to learn because people owe you an explanation. We see this all the time when people of color or queer people are asked to do the labor of educating people who want to be their allies. We need to be able to be humble enough to understand that work is on us. Those who want to be allies can't expect other people to do it for us. So curiosity needs to have humility in order to be healthy. Now, humility can really get screwed up by parts of the Christian tradition, right? There are ways in which certain parts of the Christian tradition emphasize a servanthood that is a complete denial of self in really unhealthy ways. And lots of people who are deconstructing are trying to recover from that, like find the right balance of sense of self and offering of self to others. So we're not talking with humility about a loss of self. We're talking specifically to people of privilege to recognize and reckon with our privilege and to figure out how to offer it in service to people who've been historically excluded by society and by the church. Now, you notice that I said serving and not helping. This is something that I'll talk a little bit more about in a future video, but we want to be able to offer ourselves to be of service to people who are in need or who have been excluded, rather than thinking that we bring the answers and come to help with the right answers. We emphasize and honor humility because it also involves admitting when we're wrong, admitting the stories of when we may have done a racist thing, or a homophobic thing, or a classist or ableist thing. Humility necessitates saying and acknowledging when we're wrong. Because if we can't ever admit how we've screwed up, how will we ever grow and change? We believe that people have an enormous capacity to grow and change. For people who are neurodivergent, admitting when we're wrong is so hard, right? There's all that rejection sensitivity stuff. But it's also crucial to do for the work and our own personal work. And it's also possible to do when you're among people who believe in your inherent worth and people who want to love each other. There's space for that difficulty of admitting when we're wrong. There's encouragement to do it and an understanding that other people won't think that we're awful people if we've screwed up. Hand in hand with that, humility is vulnerability, right? We can't grow and change unless we're willing to take risks, unless we're willing to step out. I think about the woman at the well that Jesus talked to. She was fully seen by Jesus. And allowing herself to be fully seen opened her up to great love. But it required being able to be truthful about herself. We can't be of use to this movement for collective liberation if we can't take the risk to be fully seen for all of who we are. And we can't be of use if we can't take the risk to be wrong. Now, I see that in this thing that plays out that I call white people paralysis, right? We are desirous of being anti-racist, of doing that kind of work in the world. But we're also desirous of not making mistakes and not being wrong, that we're going to screw it up somehow. And so being vulnerable means sometimes making a step to do a thing and finding out the thing was wrong later. We can't ever find the perfect way to do anti-racism work. We can't ever find the perfect way to do anti-racism work without risk and without the possibility that we're not going to do it right. So we have to get over that. We have to understand that perfection is the enemy of the good. And a final component about vulnerability is that we have to recognize our limits, right? We have to recognize that we're human beings who have a certain number of hours in the day, whose bodies demand rest and joy. We have to understand that we can't save the world, no one of us, and not all of us together, but we can work to make it a better place. And so one of the people that I really value in this field is Tricia Hersey, who has the NAP ministry, which is very specifically focused on people of color and a special emphasis on women. That encourage you to check out her NAP ministry social media accounts. These are not messages aimed at white people. These are messages aimed at people who carry the burdens of oppression in their bodies with them, generational trauma, all the kinds of microaggressions on a daily basis. It's an encouragement to stop, to rest, and to take care. So vulnerability means that we need to know that we can't do it all, and we can't carry that load by ourselves. The final virtue that I want to talk about today is the virtue of authenticity. Vulnerability is clearly connected to authenticity. The Bible is full of stories of people presenting themselves before God just as they are. Some people do that with worry, like Moses, right? God, I can't lead these people. Some people are like Jeremiah, who say, I'm only a boy. I don't know what I'm doing. And you know what God says back to them? God says to Moses, Aaron will help. He's got you. And God says to Jeremiah, don't say I'm only a boy. Like, I know you. I know what you're capable of. I know your gifts. I formed you. You've got this. Some people present themselves to God with confidence, right? The hemorrhaging woman who approaches Jesus, lepers who approach Jesus. They say, like, here's what's up. I'm me, and I need a little help here from you. Just as a sidebar, these are stories not that are not to focus solely on physical healing, though that's obviously a component of the story. But when people were physically healed, it represented an ability for them to be restored to communities from which they have been excluded. So some of those folks that present themselves to Jesus are just like, here I am, could use a little help. People who present themselves to God fully as themselves authentically are people who want to learn, right? We talked about that with the disciples. Or people who are sad, like Mary and Martha at the death of their brother. Or people just who are questioning a lot of stuff, like Thomas or the women at the tomb. Or Paul, right? Just Paul. If you've read any of Paul, you know that Paul is like fully comfortable being himself, right? And God uses Paul for who Paul is. Again, I think for people who are neurodivergent, maybe you're sometimes worried that your weird will slip out. We love your weird. We want you to come to this work and bring your creativity and your questions, and we want you to experience that liberation of being who you are and being loved for that. So those are just a little bit about the 4 virtues of people who are pursuing collective liberation: curiosity, humility, vulnerability, and authenticity. So I'm wondering what you would add. When you hear those virtues, what biblical stories or figures do you think of? Or stories from the Christian tradition that you would add to those? And what other virtues would you add? That's what we're going to think on this week, is those virtues. And in the future, I'll be talking about practices that we want to cultivate, foster, and honor. So I hope now that you'll enjoy this piece of music that follows, and that you'll be able to use it as a time to reinforce something that might have stuck with you during this message, or just allow you time to be contemplative and meditative. Blessings on your week.
Welcome to the Hav. My name is Sharon Hovland. I have the Hav here in Morgantown. It's a sound therapy Reiki practice. I am also a high school math teacher here in Morgantown, which I know is a weird combo, but it works for me. I invite you to find a quiet spot, however you're comfortable. That's the most important thing. Take a couple of deep breaths. Maybe hold the exhale longer than the inhale. That's always relaxing. So inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. Inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. Breathe normally. And enjoy the sounds of the bowls as the vibrations surround you. so it is. And so it is. Thank you for letting me share the bowls with you. They love to be played, and they invite everyone to come hear